Welcome back. A very good morning to you. This is the Daily Brief. My name is Ian Wafula. Our sign language interpreter is Walter Sewe. We begin with taking a look at some of the top stories that are making headlines as at this hour. A very busy day on the corridors of justice. Quite a number of petitions we shall be looking at from the Kisii and Nyamira county gubernatorial positions to also the fate of Nyali Member of Parliament, Mohammed Ali. In fact, I'm meant to understand that particular ruling is being read out right now. Before we take a look at some of those stories, now the appeal case of Nyali Member of Parliament, in which Abdallah Said, also known as Saido, appealed against the win of Mohammed Ali. And of course, we shall keep you up to speed about that. Let's first of all listen in to how that particular ruling will go.
In relation to the arranged breach, responding to grounds that touched on allegations of misuse of state resources and violence, Counsel for the first respondent advanced the view that prison officers who are attached to the first respondent were properly and legally assigned the same duties after the first respondent complained to the county commander of threats on his life. The first respondent did not assign himself the police officers, as it is the duty of the state to provide security. Therefore, the trial court's decision, according to counsel for the first respondent, was properly arrived at. On the appellant's allegation that the trial court erred in law in failing to consider the evidence relating to violence and intimidation that was allegedly perpetrated by the first respondent to the constituents of Nyali during the election period, counsel urged us to bring to bear the jurisdiction of this court, which is to consider only matters of law and not matters of fact. As regards the grounds cast under the allegation of bribery of voters, Mr. Chacha reiterated the trial court's decision that from the materials and evidence before court, it fell short of proving that any bribes were given out on behalf of the first respondent. Lastly, on the qualitative and quantitative threshold, counsel for the first respondent associated himself with the trial court's findings that no evidence was tendered to prove any compromise on the voters or any obstacle to the voter to express their will at the ballot on the 8th August 2017. Counsel for the first respondent, therefore, concluded by urging us to dismiss the appeal with cost to the respondents. The appeal was also opposed by the second and third respondents, represented by Mr. Tony Ondera. He relied on the notice of grounds affirming the trial court's decision and his written submissions. On the arranged use of ODM party colors, image, and symbols, counsel for the INDC urged us to find, in addition to the factual determination by the trial court that there were marked differences in the shade of colors, it is the trial court who had the advantage of being taken through the various shades to also take judicial notice that the 2017 general election was largely predicated on party coalitions, and there were many candidates that identified themselves in a particular coalition without belonging to ODM party. Another point to note was the fact that the appellant did not invoke the jurisdiction of the Political Party Disputes Resolution Tribunal that had the mandate to arbitrate on the Electoral Code of Conduct or even INDC. The appellant failed also to report the arranged plagiarism by the first respondent to the third respondent as required under paragraph 9b of the Code of Conduct. Although counsel admitted that the Election Offences Act prohibits bribery and treating by candidates so as to influence them to vote or refrain from voting for a particular candidate, he strongly argued that a person making such allegations that are quasi-criminal in nature bears the burden of proof which the appellant failed to discharge. Counsel for the second and third respondent sided with the trial court's decision that the incidences complained of did not affect the electioneering process and that the allegation of voter bribery was not proved whatsoever. He cited the case of Masekirito Mutegi versus Beatrice Nkadanyaga and Richard Nchapi Legago versus IDC. On the last issue of qualitative and quantitative threshold, Mr. Ondera, for the second and third respondents, submitted that there was no evidence at all to show the impugned election was not conducted in compliance with Article 38(3) of the Constitution on the citizens' rights to vote. According to him, it adhered to the general principles of elections under Article 81 of the Constitution, and the second and third respondents, and that the second and third respondents failed or neglected to follow the standards outlined under Article 86 of the Constitution in the conduct of the same election. Counsel submitted that the appellant did not fault the quantitative figures that constituted the declared resource. As such, he had to prove that the irregularities were such that they would affect the integrity of the election and thus affect the results. He cited the case of Moses Wetangura and in conclusion urged us to consider the totality of the issues raised in this appeal were not.
We shall keep you up to speed once the entire ruling has been read out, and of course we shall tell you what the that particular judge decides in regards to the fate of Nyali Member of Parliament Mohammed Ali. Now, in the meantime, we're also following quite a number of events, including the fact that a number of women activists as well as non-governmental organizations have met today in Nairobi, and this is basically to discuss matters breastfeeding at the workplace, and this is in line with the World Breastfeeding Week, which is coming up in 2 weeks, that is in August, I think next week actually. And the idea here is to promote exclusive breastfeeding amongst lactating employees by availing them necessary support, and this support is from the employers, and they have been agitating for that for quite some time now. In the meantime, like I mentioned to you, it is a very busy day on the corridors of justice, especially in Kisumu, where the fate of Nyamira Governor John Nyangarama, as well as his Kisii counterpart, James Ongwae, are set to know their fate. Baraka Karama is actually joining us right now and has been following these petitions. Baraka, what's the latest?
Well, Ian, like you've mentioned, it's quite a busy day here at the corridors of justice here in Kisumu. 2 governors from the expansive region of Kisii County Governor James Ongwae, together with his counterpart from Nyamira County, John Nyangarama, are just expected to know their fate today. In a short while ago, we expected the cases of the ruling to commence at around 11 a.m. At the appellate court. Remember, the Kisii High Court had upheld the election of the Kisii County Governor James Ongwae 2 months ago after a petition that was filed by one voter by the name of John Onsando, who had petitioned the win of the Kisii Governor. Remember, during the August 8 polls, Kisii Governor was seeking to defend his seat on an ODM ticket and was competing against the former senator for that particular region, Chris Obure, who was vying on a Jubilee ticket. And during that particular contest, Governor Ongwae managed to get 206,164 votes against Chris Obure of the Jubilee Party, who had 110,760 votes. And because of that, one voter, Joel Onsando, petitioned the win by the Kisii County Governor James Ongwae on grounds that the elections were not conducted in a free and fair manner. And the Kisii High Court upheld the win, and the same voter again petitioned that particular ruling at the appellate court. And today we expect the ruling to be made here. And as you can see behind me there, those are supporters of the Kisii County Governor alongside the supporters of John Nyagarama, who are expected to be in this particular venue. Security, of course, has been beefed up in this particular area. Police are making sure that everybody who goes inside that particular courtroom is frisked in accordance to the rules that are laid out here at the corridors of justice. Of course, also in the other case, we have the current governor for Nyamira County, whose win was also upheld by the Kisii Court. John Nyagarama is also expected to know his fate. Remember, the former MP, Dr. Walter Nyombati, had petitioned his win at the High Court upon soon after the August 8 polls, and because of that, he also made another petition at the appellate court on grounds that the elections were not conducted in a free and fair manner. So, of course, it's a busy day here at the corridor of justice, and by 11 a.m., two governors we expect that are going to know their fate. We understand that according to the registry, we are expecting the first case will be for the Kisii County Governor, where the ruling will be made by Justice Fatuma Sichali on behalf of the three-bench judge that have been hearing that particular case. So, of course, Ian, it's quite a busy day. Security, like I said, has been beefed up in this particular region, and we expect the governors for Kisii County and Nyamira County to attend this particular session. Already we've seen some of the supporters and security officials who have already been at this particular area just to wait the outcome of today's ruling here at the appellate court in Kisumu. So, of course, Ian will give you an up-to-date information in regards to that particular ruling here in Kisumu.
Thank you very much for that. Baraka Karama is joining us live from Kisumu, where, like he has mentioned, the fate of Nyamira and Kisii governors is set to be known today, depending on how the court will rule there. Also waiting to know his fate is Mohammed Ali, that is the Member of Parliament for Nyali. So we'll keep you up to speed on this. But even as we follow that, these are some of the top stories that are making headlines as at this hour. Of course, conservationists all over the world have been concerned in regards to the reports of the death of 9 rhinos following a translocation process that happened a couple of weeks ago. Now today we're expecting the Tourism and Wildlife Cabinet Secretary, that is Najib Balala, to release a report on exactly what went wrong. Certainly something that we shall be following very keenly, to just take a look at what led to the death of these 9 very special rhinos in this process that was actually aimed at protecting them. Also very closely, remember that over the past few months, we've seen Kenyatta National Hospital making headlines, not for the very good reasons, from matters insecurity to management claims. So today we're expecting the Health Cabinet Secretary, Cecily Kariuki, to launch the strategic plan of the Kenyatta National Hospital. So we shall be looking at that also. And without forgetting that the Senate Ad hoc Committee, chaired by Makueni Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., will today release a report on the Solai Dam tragedy, which left at least 47 people dead and hundreds of others homeless, even as they try to agitate for compensation. We shall find out what that particular committee found and, of course, tell you some of their recommendations. And then finally, still on matters contraband sugar, the country awaits to know the truth as to whether the sugar that is on our tables is contaminated or not. And today, hopefully, we shall be able to get some of these answers as the government's chemist actually appears before the Joint Committee of Trade as well as Agriculture. So those are indeed some of the top stories that we are following right now. But we're going to be taking a look shortly on matters Mau Forest. But let me just introduce my guest this morning, Karl Marx. Karl, thank you for joining us. Now, before we take a look at the very latest in terms of the Mau Forest, this certainly has been making headline. And of course, pitting two sides of, perhaps Jubilee or even sections of members of parliament against each other in the manner in which the government is doing this exercise. Just give us your quick comment on this.
Ian, thank you so much. When you talk of the recent name callings, the accusations, the counter-accusations regarding the Mau evictions, I think it is disgraceful it is erratum, and I can say it is retrogressive. That, just to say the least. Because Mau, as we talk of Mau, Mau is very crucial water tower.
Yeah.
Not only for the nation, but I think even for the entire Africa. And its conservation, I think, cannot be overemphasized. But politicizing the whole process now makes it to look like we don't actually think that the life for the future generation is more important than now the short-term politics that we're doing. Now, look at it this way. Last year, I think this country was hit by drought, and it lasted for so long, and then followed by now the floods all over. So that means the predictions of the weather could be much, could it be that we could have contained that, then today we could have been talking of another different story.
Yeah.
I think it is high time we also understand that when we talk of evictions, can it be done in human manner? So that we don't subject the lives of the kids, the people living there, just in the name of they have encroached the place. We need to do it in a very clear way that those are human beings. As much as somewhere along the line we miscalculated or we decided to do things on the right, on the wrong way, but can we do it in the right way so that we consider that the human life is concerned, the human life is touched, and the human life is involved in this process. So that if we take them away of that, over the place, let us not come with these things of like there is cut line, there is what. If really we are talking about the Mau and the conservation is supposed to be done, let us do it in the right way so that anybody who is there, let not the poor be the people suffering in the name of encroachment, but even the rich who have also encroached the place. Because it is not only about the poor who actually moved within that place, but also the rich who are also there. So let this thing cut across. We need to understand that if it is about the conservation, let it be done holistically so that it satisfies the needs of this nation and also Africa as a whole. Because conservation is not meant for one person. There is a question about
those who are being affected by this, but you know, in case you're wondering, we're talking about matters Mau Forest, and this is the very latest. And of course, a humanitarian crisis looms in the expansive Mau Forest catchment area after the government issued notice for the commencement of the second phase of the exercise targeting 40,000 illegal settlers. Narok County Commissioner, that is George Natembeya, has vowed that this particular process has to go on despite being fought by sections of members of parliament, so sort of pitting the national government against the National Assembly. Let's take a look at the very latest on this.
Hundreds of families kicked out in the first phase of evictions in the expansive Mau Forest, now forced to spend cold nights in makeshift tents, with others seeking shelter in the bushes even as the government stands its ground, despite an uproar from politicians.
Where we are now, it's time for hard decisions. Those who are prepared to make those hard decisions, let them join us. Those who don't want to take those hard decisions, please let them give us a break. Yeah, you can become spectators.
So far, 7,082 people have been flushed out of the forest during the first phase of evictions, which saw at least 1,700 structures demolished and 12 hectares of land recovered. Authorities say that anybody living beyond the boundaries set up in 2008 will be evicted, with those owning genuine titles being asked to surrender them for verification.
You're not telling them the truth. Because they know that boundary, they have respected it. Wakati naanza operation, I want to confirm, ni wananchi walikuwa naambia askari hata boundary ndio hii, hata beacon ndio hii, hata beacon ndio hii.
Attempts by Kericho Governor Paul Chepkwony hit a brick wall after the Environment Court declined to issue conservatory orders.
I thank the court for being on the right side of history today, for taking a very important position that by rejecting that application by Mr. Chepkwony.
On the ground, the sullen faces of the evictees telling the despair and their frustrations. They are among thousands of families that were evicted from the gazetted area of the Mau Forest.
Na kama iko ukora kwa mtu wa land ya Narok County, sisi ambayo nanyanyaswa na sisi hapana jua kutengeneza hivi vitu. Sisi ni watu raia hapana jua kutengeneza hivi vitu.
With their homes no more They are now living in makeshift tents with limited access or absence of basic amenities. All factors left constant, the humanitarian crisis affecting these people here is quite disheartening, with most affected being women and children. Women and men left hopeless, making every attempt to fend for their children. This woman was even forced to eat raw vegetables to cushion her from the biting hunger. The young ones fighting for the leftovers. 62-year-old Francis Kipkemboi says that his life and that of his family has now been reduced to zero. Mr. Francis Kipkemboi Korir sits pensively, perhaps waiting for any help that may come his way. But this is a makeshift tent where him and the wife sleep at night, plus all their 6 children. Homeless and left hopeless, he had even contemplated taking away his own life.
Ameona tabu nyingi, ajambu kuenda mbinguni, alafu siko onekana watoto wangu kubariki dunia hii.
Questions, however, abound on why and when the evictions will target high-profile individuals who were allocated huge chunks of land during the reign of retired President Daniel Arap Moi. For now, their only hope and prayer is that the government will come to their aid and assist them to rebuild their lives now that the cold weather of July is here with them. Victor Low in Masaita in Narok County.
And we shall be catching up with Victor Low. That was yesterday. Let's find out how the situation will be today, or rather is today, but we shall be catching up with him shortly. He talks about an eviction process that targets about 40,000 people. That is quite a huge number. Your take on that, and the fact that for 40,000 people to actually settle in this particular area, you know, one that is we're trying to conserve, it means it must have been starting over time. Just tell me, what do you think about that?
You know, when you look at Mao from the history, there were some ranches that were actually, I think there were 5 ranches that were there. But if you get the total acreage of the ranches, it could have not actually amount to what we talk about today. Now, having said that, you know, when we talk of encroaching a water tower, and then you could see the year, let's talk of, I mean, from 2010, the population that was there that we could have actually flushed out, we were talking of a figure of roughly 5,000 plus, okay? And now, you know, with the political differences and people taking politics, politicizing the whole process, now the number grew because there was laxity in the flushing process, okay? And then the procedures on how that could have been done. So during all these back forth and all that, this made the number to grow from now, the 5,000 to the 40,000 we are talking about. You know, flushing 40,000 people out from a place is not an easy thing. Yeah. And then this is why now...
perhaps could this be the reason why, if reports are on the ground or anything to go by, that is why there's such use of force, for instance?
Precisely, because anytime there is for you to actually flush people out of residential areas, you must use force. And that is why there's a confrontation within the forces and also the people living within the places. Okay. But then I think we need to take it to another level. We need not only to target, Mao as one-sided. We need to see Mao only as Mao, so that anybody who has encroached Mao, let all of them leave. Whether you are rich, whether you are poor. But let not the poor suffer in the name of politics, because they are now in the name of a pawn, whereby people cannot differentiate when to use them and when not to use them. Because if this is an executive order, because the eviction taking place is an executive order, okay, meaning there is a clear process that was meant in how this thing is supposed to be done, and let it be done in a way that before we have a unanimous agreement in terms of how things are supposed to be done, I think there was a clear laid roadmap on how these people will be evicted and how they are going to be resettled. Because if you send them away, then where are you taking them?
Okay, we're taking a short commercial break, but the question that perhaps we'll be tackling is what the residents on the ground are asking exactly. You know, this particular process is targeting only the small fish, quote unquote, while, you know, those who own actually the large pieces of
But the
land in
truth
that
is,
particular
they need
area.
to leave Mau.
Okay.
They need to leave Mau. There is no shortcut in that.
Regardless. Okay. So I'll be taking your comments on that. Remember, this is a daily brief, keeping you up to speed on matters, current affairs, politics, and news as it happens. A busy day on the corridors of justice, waiting to know the fate of Mohammed Ali, Member of Parliament Nyali, James Ongwae, Governor Kisii County, as well as John Nyangarama for Nyamira County. We shall find out whether the court decides they were elected rightfully. Stay tuned.